Hi there, just read this disclaimer please. Okay, right, so tracking how well you're doing with your portfolio. All of the spreadsheets I've shown you so far, they kind of show what I've bought, what I've sold, the profit I made on that, and kind of the dividends I'm receiving. But if someone was to ask me, what percentage return have you made from this date to that date, I couldn't answer them based on the spreadsheets I've shown so far, this portfolio kind of tracking kind of thing. So we need some method. We don't need it. If you want to put the effort in and you're interested in this stuff and you like playing around with spreadsheets, it's good to create a record of your portfolio and how it's changed over time, and give yourself the information you want to analyse. Now the way I do it is by unitise. It's called unitising the portfolio. Not even sure if that's a word, to be honest. So basically what I do, what unitisation is basically mirroring what open-ended fund managers do with theirs. So basically there is income units here, there is accumulation units here, and they do slightly different things. So the accumulation units is in many ways much simpler. Basically, all of your money stays within the accumulation unit, and if you got the price of this fund on one date and compared it to a price of this fund on another date, that is exactly how it's performed. Whereas the income units, they track the accumulation units, except for in the case of Marble Multicap, except on these two dates, the 31st of January and the 31st of July, they go ex-dividend, and they actually pay you the cash dividend, whereas the accumulation unit, it just keeps the money within its unit price. That's why the price of the accumulation unit is higher than the price for the income unit. So obviously, the income unit, you can't really use the price to give yourself a total return between two dates, because you have to then take into account the dividends that it's paid, that you've received in your brokerage account. So in many ways the accumulation unit is much more appropriate to work out how well you're doing. The only thing I'd say about the income units are, if you're focused a bit on dividends like I am, what that gives you is, it gives you some sort of measure of, so if we go to the charts and performance of the income unit, it's a little bit misleading because we're on the income unit page here, but actually by default what shows is you see down here, the total return is the accumulation. Basically that's plotting the accumulation unit, even though we're on the income page. It's weird, isn't it? But if you just click on price rather than total return, it changes it. See how that's much lower, that's flatter compared to total return. It's going up there. Click on price, it's going flatter. So what that shows is it gives you a measure of how your capital level is doing, and then separately you get the information on the dividends, which you can, if you want, collate. So you can keep a record of the dividends and how they're growing or how they're falling, etc. So it kind of breaks down the accumulation unit's total return into two parts, into the capital appreciation or falling and income. So I mean, if you're not focused on dividends at all, sometimes it's better just to track an accumulation unit price, because it's simpler, less data to record and things like that. So what I've done is I've created a spreadsheet here which I am using to record the performance of my portfolio. So I mean, what you'd start off with is blank. You enter the white cells basically, and then the blue cells you don't touch, they get calculated automatically. So if I undo what I've just deleted, so what you can see here is the first row is different from the others. The first row sets the accumulation price on the start of your portfolio, the first date. So if you were starting your portfolio on the 1st of January, it sets the price at 1, and then from then on, so I mean, this at some point I would imagine when this started, whatever date it was, it would have started at 100p probably, just because it's a nice round number. And over the years it's grown to that for the income units, and it's grown to that for the accumulation units. So you set it to 1, and then to work out the number of accumulation units, it takes the value of the portfolio, which I've arbitrarily put in as 160 grand, divides it by the price, so it works out that at the beginning there's 160 accumulation units. And then for the income units, it does exactly the same thing. So right at the start, the income units and the accumulation units are the exact same price, and we own the exact same number of them, because nothing's happened to the portfolio yet, it's just a starting point. Now, so basically what you do is, each date you want to value the portfolio, or you want to do something with it, add capital or take dividends out, etc., you create a line. You don't have to do it every day, but I mean, to me, once a month seems good. So 1st of January and then 1st of February. I'll keep the value. You just enter the value, so you log into your brokerage account, you put in the value of the assets that are in there, including any cash that's in there, and you type it in there, or you copy and paste it, and it adds it up. It then, so as you can see here on the 1st of February, because all of the values are exactly the same, the unit price is the same. But if we were to add 10 grand to the portfolio, there, you can see it's gone up by, the unit price for both of them is now 6.25% higher, because we've added 10 grand. So presumably 10 divided by 160 is 6.25, yeah. And it increases the value. Now, another thing that happens, so if your portfolio pays dividends, which most portfolios do, let's say there was a dividend paid in the portfolio, and you wanted to give it to yourself. Actually, you do this anyway. Even if you don't pay yourself the dividend, you still need to put it in this dividend column. So if the portfolio paid £500 of dividends between the 1st of January and the 1st of February, you need to pay it out of the portfolio by putting it in there as a negative number. And as you can see, so what happens there is, the price of the accumulation unit has actually gone up, because no money's left here, has it? We've taken £500 out. So if the value of the portfolio had stayed the same, like it was a few seconds ago, the account 3 would actually lose £500. So if you'd paid out £500 to yourself, it would have lost £500, and actually the accumulation price has stayed exactly the same, 6.25, and that's what we want. Because even though you've paid yourself out £500, the portfolio has still performed the same. It's just that you've chosen to pay yourself £500. So quite correctly, the accumulation price keeps itself as 6.25% higher than it was a month ago. Whereas the income unit, because the income unit doesn't measure total performance, it measures capital performance and a separate dividend, which is exactly what's happened here. So it makes sense that the income unit price has gone down to take into account that. I imagine if we total these two cells, that one and that one, yeah, it adds up to 1.0625, which is the same as the accumulation price. So that's what happens when you pay yourself a dividend. It adjusts itself because it keeps the accumulation unit the same, and it does that by changing the number of units of the accumulation fund that you own. So it's reduced the number of units. So that if you multiplied that number by that number, it would end up being 169,500. Equally, if you multiplied that number by that number, it would equal that as well. So it keeps everything in equilibrium. Okay, so now, say there wasn't any dividends, but instead there was, you got a bonus from work, and you can add £5,000 to the portfolio. So £5. Let's get us back to where we were before. So we're all square now. We're back to 6.25% up on both units. So let's say you added it to cash first. You hadn't invested it yet. You just put it in as cash first. So on the 1st of February, you had 15 grand instead of 10 grand. What you need to do then is add £5,000 in this column. So what that's done is, again, the accumulation price always stays the same at 1.625, and in this case it's also stayed the same for the income price as well. But by adding it into that column, we haven't unfairly, so without adding it there, the portfolio accumulation price and the income price has gone up to 9% up rather than 6% up, which is unfair because the portfolio hasn't grown by an extra 5 grand naturally. It's just had an extra 5 grand added. That's why we need to put it in this column here, and it keeps it all fair. And it keeps it fair by purchasing extra units of both the accumulation and the income. So rather than affecting the unit prices, it's added units to the portfolio. So this number here is still tracking how well the portfolio's done, not how much money you've added to it or subtracted from it, as the case may be, because in another circumstance you might take off £5,000 like that, but it's still kept the portfolio accumulation and the income price the same, 625. I'll delete this one here because it could confuse matters, couldn't it? Now another scenario. So that example I showed before, let's get back to where we were before. That example I showed before where we had a £500 dividend paid within the portfolio. And in that example, the £500 got paid to your bank account because you were maybe you're spending it, maybe you're in retirement and you're spending the dividends you get paid within the portfolio. But if you aren't spending though, if you want to keep everything within the portfolio, all the dividends and all the interest on the cash, if you want to keep it in the portfolio, then this is not accurate, because in this example, 9,500. Sorry. Yeah, in this example, your cash level would have gone down, or maybe that number would have gone down by £500 instead. Depends where you take it from. In this example, you have sold accumulation units, and you've had money paid out to you, which has affected the income unit price. But if you want to reinvest the dividends, what you need to do is you need to put 500 in that column as well. And in that scenario, you wouldn't have subtracted 10,000 from that account. You'd have just left the 500 quid in there. So each dividend or interest on the cash you get paid has to always go in the dividend column. But if you want to keep that dividend in the portfolio, you have to also add it there. And if you kept it in the portfolio, whichever account it had come from would reflect that value. So if you kept it, the value would be like that. But if you had sent it out of the portfolio to your bank, it would have, what would it be? 59,500 instead of, no, sorry, 49,500. It'd be like that. So whatever you do, I've changed the number there, haven't I? It was 59,500. I forgot that I'd gone up to 60 grand rather than 50. It'd be like that. But if you hadn't sent the money to your own account, it would still be 60,000. And you'd need to add 500 there, like that, to show that that £500 of dividend that's gone out has also been reinvested by capital in. So in that scenario, that's like holding an accumulation unit and not selling anything. So quite accurately, this column has sold £500 worth of units, and this column has bought back £500 of worth of units. So this number doesn't change. And equally, the income units, if you held the income units, you would have got the money in cash and the unit price would have gone down, which is correct. So the unit price does go down, but what you've done is you've reinvested this dividend you got paid, you've reinvested it. So to reinvest it in an income unit of a fund, you would have to buy more units. So that's reflected here. It's bought more units, the income unit price has gone down, but you've bought more units. So it all fits together. And also on this chart, I've actually put in a little chart here. So the blue line is the accumulation unit price and the income unit price is the red line. I suppose I could add the dividend as well, but that'll be only be a yearly thing to make sense. I'll show you how that looks once there's more data in there. This is my, where is it? Annual return. This is my actual one. So, you know, as you build up more data, the graph starts to become more meaningful. As you can see how the income units are lower than the accumulation units, and you can see how atrociously bad I've been doing over the past 2 years. How I think this should be used, I've kind of mentioned it already, but what I think should be used is, how it should be used is, I've tried to write it here. All dividends should be paid out in unitisation. I mean, that has to happen, otherwise it's inaccurate. Otherwise, the income units are not correct. Should be paid out in unitisation, even if they stay in the account in reality. So, for example, you need to pay out the dividends to measure it accurately for the income units. But if you've got an ISA and you get dividends paid into the ISA's cash section, you don't want to pay them out because you want to keep as much money as you can sheltered in the ISA. So, in my example, what I do here is, so for instance, iWeb ISA, when I put in the value, I've subtracted 6,039 and 64 pence off the ISA value, and I've made it I keep a little note of it here, so I know the next time I put in a value for the ISA, I've put in the value of the ISA that I've got from the website, but each time I subtract that, and then at some point, when I do my kind of switcheroo, where I sell something outside of the ISA and I buy something inside of the ISA, that number will reduce to reflect the amount of, basically it's the amount of cash that's in the ISA that has in my portfolio unitisation has already been paid out in dividends. So that's one thing to know about using it. One little thing, I mean, I'll show you on my real example. So one thing to note is that the cash does get paid interest, but you might have cash all over the place, because what I've done is I see cash as being part of the portfolio to a certain point. Basically what I do is I've decided on a level of cash in my portfolio so that I have about 5 grand outside of that. So this isn't my whole all of my worth. I've got 5 grand in cash extra, roughly. So I've got 5 grand that's like a rainy day fund. So I see the rest of this cash as money that if an opportunity arose, I would invest the rest of that cash. That's 17,892. It's actually 17,883 because at some point I'll pay out the interest that's been added here. Because at this latest valuation point, I haven't paid myself any dividends yet. So because I see that money as being investable, I suppose, I think it's important to keep it in the portfolio tracking. Because if at some point, say the market dropped by 50%, I might see that as a really good opportunity to get the rest of this 17 grand odd into the portfolio. And that would have been an investment decision, which will affect how well my portfolio does. So I think it's fair to keep that amount of cash being tracked. Because if you always have a zero level of cash in your portfolio that's being tracked, you're never going to keep a track of how well you've timed your entry points into the market or your exit points out of the market, which is hard to do anyway. So I keep that in there. But it wouldn't be fair just to keep it as a static amount either, because my savings at the moment are getting 1.35% interest. So each time I go from one date to another, I use this little formula here. I put in the start date, the new date, The interest rate has been like that for a while, but I know in January it's going to go down to 1.2%, so I'll change that then. I put in the value of the cash there in this cell. I'll do that way so you can see it in blue. And then it gives me, whoops, that's the wrong place to go. It gives me the new value and how much interest it's added. So I don't just let the cash be 0%, I let it be 1.34% return each year. On the template one, I've put that formula up there in the top right hand corner. But then obviously each time I pay myself a load of dividends, it gets swept up there. So I've made a little note here that my cash balance, once my dividends have been paid out, when I say dividends I mean interest as well, my cash balance should be go back to that. So as you can see, I don't do it every time I value the portfolio. I don't have to sweep out all of the dividends and interest. I mainly do it once a month. I sweep out the dividends and interest. Well, yeah, that's roughly right. End of October, end of November, I've done it. But as you can see, because I'm retired, I'm living off the income, all of this capital in out is pretty much blank for me, because I've only done it once. I've added 80 grand when I sold my flat in November 2017, and as you can see, I've gradually invested it as the cash levels have gone down. Right then, so using the data. Okay, so I've added this. Well, you can kind of do whatever you like with it, but one thing you can do is I've added a little tab here, so you can just. So what I've calculated here is you put in the start date, you put in the end date, you put in the start price, which is 1 for me, and the end price, which is that today. This is my actual numbers, appalling. It then works out how many years that is as a fraction, and then it works out what that is as an annual percentage. So if we do the sum here just to show that it's working correctly, so let's increase the number of decimals, see if we can get it better. So if something increased by 5.13%, it's like doing 1.051352603 to the power of 10 years. So we're compounding that return for 10 years. We get 1.649, which is the end price that I randomly typed in here. So there we go. That's one thing you can do. If you just want to pick 2 random points, you can work out how you're doing on the accumulation units or the income units if you prefer, and work out the annual return you're getting. Or you can just look at the chart, which should grow with time. Alright, so there's my little spreadsheet. I'll include a link to it in the description. Okay, so I had a slight issue with the chart. So if you've got Excel and you want to use Excel on your own computer, use this first link. And it seems to open in, I don't know, Google Drive. I don't know, something different. I'm kind of working it out. But the chart doesn't show here. But if you click the download button there and save it to your computer, it suddenly reappears with the chart, which seems to work okay. Using Google Sheets, for some reason, if I use Google Sheets and download it to Excel, it messes up the chart. But using that first link, the chart works okay in Excel. And then using the second link, if you just want to carry on using Google Sheets, for some reason the chart works okay in Google Sheets if you use Google Sheets. But if you download this file from Google Sheets to your computer, the chart messes up. So to use it in Google Sheets, you click File and then Make a Copy. So you've made a copy to your own account instead of mine, and then it allows you to edit the spreadsheet from then on, which it wouldn't let you do before in the original version, because that's my version. You can only view. Alright guys, have fun. See you later.